So apparently, one Bitcoin is going to be worth one Lamborghini in 2021. How do we know this? Who's saying it and why? What proof do they have? What did the trend say? And what does the history say? So if you're new to Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency in general, go ahead and click that subscribe button because we're going to follow this cryptocurrency story all the way through 2021. Hey everyone, my name is Randy and welcome back to the Late Night Grind. This is a channel that is covering all things finance, cryptocurrencies, business, investing, markets, marketing, entrepreneurship, and so if any of those topics interest you, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Don't forget to tap the bell notification icon. That way YouTube will notify you when I release a new video. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up button because every time you do that, YouTube will actually send you one Bitcoin. I'm kidding. Doesn't work like that. All right, guys, well, let's get into it. So recently, Jesse Powell, who's the CEO of Kraken, which is a cryptocurrency exchange, was recently on an interview with Bloomberg Tech. And in this interview, he made mention to several things. They were asking what his predictions were for Bitcoin in the year 2021 and past that in terms of what he thinks in terms of the pricing, the valuation, things like that. And he had something really interesting to say. So let's take a look at that clip.
So talk to us a little bit about public acceptance. You know, we're watching Bitcoin climb higher. I think last time you were on the show, you said it was going to infinity, the moon, and beyond, but I asked you for a specific number. Since then, we have seen some losses, though, climbing back. What about this? Where do you see Bitcoin by the end of the year?
Yeah, I know it's kind of tough. I think I said Bitcoin's going to infinity, and that's kind of hard to comprehend because I'm measuring it in terms of dollars, and it might be easier to understand it if we measure it, like in terms of Teslas, right? Like now one Bitcoin for one Model 3, or, probably by the end of the year, I think it'll be one Bitcoin per Lambo, and probably by the end of next year, it'll be one Bitcoin per Bugatti. So, I think that to me and to the crypto community, I think those kinds of assets make it easier to measure Bitcoin against because you never know where the dollar is going to be. There could be, 10 times as many US dollars out there a year from now. So it's really hard to measure Bitcoin against the dollar.
That's right, a Bugatti. One Bitcoin could be worth a Bugatti, which if you're not a car person, it's basically 3 steps above a Lamborghini. You're talking a Lamborghini being maybe a $300,000 to $500,000 car. Bugattis, we're talking multi-millions. So is that realistic? Could that actually happen? And in a word, yes, it actually could. Is it realistic? Probably not. A lot of the crypto experts think that probably the year after this, there will be some sort of bear market or pullback. And what's going to happen beyond that, we don't really know. But here's kind of the time frame that we're looking at for 2021 in terms of the Bitcoin price predictions and why. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the fear and greed factor. Now, this was an index that was put together basically to show what it says, basically the fear and the greed. Typically, when the greed factor is at the highest, generally signals that it's going to be something that it's either on a bull run or there is about to be a pullback in the market. And when the fear is at the greatest or at the lowest of that chart, generally the stock, or in this case Bitcoin's price, has a lot more room to grow, probably about to go on a bull run. It's a good buying opportunity. And as we can see, for the past while, it's actually been sitting at around 70, right now about 74 on the greed factor, and this typically signals that it's in the middle of a bull run. This is what a lot of the Bitcoin experts and crypto experts have been pointing to, that it's not necessarily hitting that maximum greed factor where people are getting scared, taking profits, getting out because they're expecting something negative to come along, but they're actually holding their Bitcoin for longer and longer, even during a massive upswing bull run like we're on right now. The next thing we're going to look at is one of the most overlooked items when talking about Bitcoin and future price predictions, and that is the Bitcoin halving chart. So if you're new to Bitcoin, halving is basically an event where the creator of Bitcoin actually wrote into the code that every 210,000 blocks on the blockchain that are mined, the amount of Bitcoin that is given to those miners or rewarded to those miners is actually cut in half. What this does is slows down the amount of Bitcoin that is created. And as we know, there's a finite amount of about 21 million Bitcoins in total. And so it slows down that flow of Bitcoin into the market to those miners that are actually mining the Bitcoin. So this decreases the flow of Bitcoin into the market, thus increasing scarcity and, of course, driving prices up, which is essentially the exact opposite of what most of the world is doing right now, including the United States government, which is basically printing money, giving more and more money, which essentially devalues the fiat currency, thus driving things like real assets, like real estate, stocks, bonds, and yes, Bitcoin prices sky high. Now, the last halving event actually took place in the middle of 2020. And what we can see is that about 12 to 16 months after a halving event, there's a massive upswing in Bitcoin price. Now, the last several halving events has resulted in Bitcoin's price going up 20, 30, even close to 40 times what the price was prior to the halving events. So generally the halving event occurs, scarcity sets in, and there's a multitude of other factors. But as we can see from these charts, the Bitcoin price basically goes parabolic shortly afterward, then going into a bear market or a pullback or consolidation market, where it then settles back down, and the greed fear index also settles back down. So right now, the top crypto experts are basically making this sound like it's a sure thing. Like $300,000 per Bitcoin by the end of the year is pretty much a done deal. I mean, after all, maybe there's a reason that Elon Musk and Michael Saylor and PayPal and now some of the world's largest hedge funds are jumping headfirst into Bitcoin with one single goal: accumulation. As we heard a few days ago, PayPal is now allowing people to use their system to buy things through the PayPal system using Bitcoin, as well as other cryptocurrencies. What they're doing is they're not turning around and paying the merchant Bitcoin, they're turning around and paying the merchant cash while they are holding on to the Bitcoin. Now, why would they do that? They're only going to do that if they think the price of Bitcoin is going to go much higher. And not only that, with one click of a button, Elon Musk actually just gave everybody that's invested into the S&P 500 a piece of Bitcoin. How did he do that? Well, since Tesla is essentially in the S&P 500, he made that purchase of Bitcoin through the Tesla company. Thus, everybody that's invested in the S&P 500 is also invested in Tesla, which is now invested in Bitcoin. In fact, his $1.5 billion investment has now turned a profit more than all of his combined car sales from 2020. Now, when Elon Musk bought the Bitcoin, it was somewhere around $30,000 to $35,000 per Bitcoin. So if we estimate that Bitcoin could be at 300 or 350,000 by the end of the year, that's a 10x. Now imagine Tesla's $1.5 billion 10x's to $15 billion by the end of the year. That's going to change something for Tesla's stock. Yeah, it's going to go up. Way up. So Bitcoin, do you want to own a Lamborghini by the end of the year? Well, actually, that's not what happens, because as we can see, most of the people that are buying Bitcoin are holding it. Most of the long-term investors in Bitcoin from 2013, 15, 16, 17, they've been holding Bitcoin because they've kind of see the same things that most of the market and most of the world is just starting to learn about, which is to hold Bitcoin. Because of all the things that I've been going over, the value is just going to continue to increase. Yes, there will be some pullbacks, there will be some bear markets, but in general, most of those older buyers are holding. And now what's coming out in the news, we're finding out that the new buyers that are coming in 2020 and 2021 are also holding. These aren't day traders that are flipping Bitcoin on a daily basis. Now, some are, but most of the time. So one final point on the speculation that Bitcoin is going to the moon this year. And that's because of widespread adoption. It's because of multinational companies now jumping into it. It's because of billionaires now jumping into it. It's because of the scary high fiat currency money printing numbers that are going on, not just in the US, but around the world, which of course in turn produces fiat currency devaluation and the overall acceptance of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a new asset class to store value, as a tax safe haven, and to hedge against inflation. And the overall explosion of crypto and blockchain-based finance, which is basically set to force the current financial industries to either adapt or possibly be replaced. It's kind of hard to bet against it. In fact, even the US dollar has basically been monopoly money since 1976. When Richard Nixon severed it from the gold standard, the US dollar has basically been, well, essentially meaningless. Unless, as I've been telling people for a few years now, nothing really has value unless two people agree it has value, a buyer and a seller. So while some people think that cryptocurrency is fake money or monopoly money, you could essentially say the same thing about the US dollar or any fiat currency, because it takes two people to agree that something has value for it to actually have value. And it doesn't really matter whether it's the dollar, gold, silver, Bitcoin, goats, chickens, a handshake, time, or Lambos. But if you see value in this channel, go ahead, click the subscribe, and we're gonna follow this all the way through to 2021. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.